You found it. Your home for the best content on your favorite team, the Fighting Tigers of LSU. Do us a favor. Subscribe to the channel. Leave your comments below. And be sure to smash that like button. Vibe check, Mark. How is the collective Alabama universe feeling going into this game Saturday?
Growing more and more confident by the week, but maybe cautiously optimistic might be the best way of putting it. We had some listeners on our show say this has been a fun year because they're on the edge of their seat, which I thought was kind of an interesting take. But it kind of sums up the year, man. It's just it's different for sure. You just don't know which Alabama's going to show up.
How good is the Alabama defense?
I've been saying really since the Ole Miss game that it had the potential of being championship caliber. They have a way about them. They're very tough up front. They're very disciplined. They've got that middle linebacker, the smart guy, that typical Alabama linebacker that makes all the right calls. I think Deontay Lawson at the wheel has really kind of turned into that guy. They got the stud in Dallas Turner. Kool-Aid McKinstry has been the guy that people kind of fear in the secondary, so they've gone at Terrion Arnold, and he's come to play. He's probably improved more than any guy on that defense. I think they're championship caliber. Now, there are a couple lulls in there where you're like, what the hell is going on, right? But it's almost like it's contagious. They clearly caught it from the offense. But I think all in all, this is probably, and you probably answer this question better than I could, Matt, I think they're as good, if not better, than any defense LSU has faced to this point.
I think that's fair. And I do think that Bama's defense is sort of what and what with Florida State defensively.
Sure.
My question is, do you think Alabama, or how much do you think Alabama will be able to limit this LSU offense, which is averaging 550 yards and 44 points, Mark, in conference games?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. It's kind of the $1 million question, right? I do think they are going to have to find. I think there's going to be a point in this game where LSU just runs all over them, and I think LSU fans are going to sit back and they're going to kind of smile. And I think that's going to happen at some point. I also think, though, if Alabama can get some pressure, and this is going to sound crazy, but keep him in the pocket, I think they could get a couple stops. The question is, obviously, can they get enough of them? And I think that's where the apprehension is on the Alabama side. What was really interesting, Matt, was at the Tennessee game where they got down 20-7. So they interviewed Saban at the end of the first quarter, and you're just expecting that typical Saban blow up. Like it was bad. They were just bad. It wasn't just that Tennessee was good. They just weren't, like, Alabama wasn't good at football at that point.
Right.
But he was very cool, very calm, very confident. And then you got that same thing from him at half when they were down. I think it was 27 at half, my mistake. But it was like, what, dude, are we watching the same game? It's like he knew that they were better than Tennessee, and if they just went out and did what they were supposed to do, everything was going to be fine. It was like a complete 180. It was shocking the way he had, as calm as he was. And as it turns out, they turned him into a prophet. They went out and beat the hell out of him in the second half.
Yeah.
So sometimes I think Nick Saban knows something the rest of us don't.
It's almost like he's the greatest coach ever.
I know.
Mark Heim is with us on Twitter at Mark_Heim, AL.com and WNSP. I did want to ask about the slow start. So Bama's trailed at half of 3 SEC games, but they've also come back to win each of those, obviously.
Yeah.
Is the slow start more of a concern, or the second half adjustments more of a credit? I don't know if I'm asking that correctly, but what would you say is the more important reality? Them starting slow being a bad thing, or their ability to adjust in the second half?
I think them starting slow is the bigger issue. I think more people point to the adjustments in the second half. But I think the reason they do that, though, is because they started the season so poorly. I mean, the pre-snap penalties. This is a team, Matt, that got a pre-snap penalty on a victory formation this season. How the hell is that even possible? I've never heard of that before. I mean, it was that bad. So we've seen, look, if they get off to a slow start, it can be a very long. This LSU offense is as good as they've seen, right? I don't think there's any doubt. It's the best. It's the best offense in the country right now. I mean, I'd put Oregon up there from a scheme standpoint, but LSU is just running all over people. And the problem with Alabama is you've seen them run the ball well, Matt. You've seen them throw it really well. But you've never seen them do both in the same game for a consistent amount of time. And so the question is, can this Alabama team, which has, I think, college football playoff potential, can you throw it all in a big pot of gumbo and serve it up at one time? That's the question that we have yet to be able to see. And I think Nick Saban has taken a different approach this year. He sees what we see, a lot of young guys making dumb mistakes and not being a quote-unquote part of the process and playing one play at a time and not looking at the end result, but doing all the things that you need to get that result. And I think you've seen a steady improvement in all those categories. So, yeah, better to hit LSU November 4th than September 4th, that's for sure.
A couple more for you, Mark. You referenced the Alabama defense being championship caliber. Is the Alabama offense championship caliber?
No. Not right now. I mean, I think they have the pieces. I think Jalen Milroe is just a tremendous athlete. It's weird, man. He's got a great deep ball, but it's clear he doesn't go through the progressions quite yet. He's young, man. He's a young guy, kind of been thrown in the fire, and Alabama's had this long string of quarterbacks, so they just expect this instant, like, Heisman Trophy candidate, and he's just not there yet. I think he can be, but he doesn't see the checkdowns, or he doesn't go through the progressions quick enough, and he doesn't see the guys that are open. Now he's a hell of a runner, but he's that guy that wants to be the one that sits in the pocket. I think he probably needs to run a little bit more. He ran a lot early, and then kind of stopped that right as he's trying to develop as a passer. The question of whether or not they had a legit number one receiver was a question for a lot of the season, especially early. Jermaine Burton proved to be that guy. They've got speed with Isaiah Bond and Jermaine Burton, so they have the pieces. But no, to answer your question, they need to get better before we start talking about them in that breath.
I wanted to also ask about the offensive line, because I think we've become so accustomed to Bama just pumping first-round draft picks into the league that when you see Bama allowing more sacks than all but four teams in college football, it's a little jarring. So what's happened there, Mark?
Yeah, so there was a lot of, so you probably remember J.C. Latham at SEC Media Days talking about how, I mean, he had ready to run through a brick wall. And then they come out and they're just not disciplined. There's talk now that they're almost too big and not athletic enough to go against, more athletic front sevens. And they've struggled a lot, and they've gotten better. That's the good news if you're an Alabama fan. They have improved. The question is, can they improve? Have they improved enough to give Jalen Milroe enough time for his receivers to get downfield, because he won't hit the short intermediate routes? So, they run the ball fairly well sometimes. It's just real inconsistent. That's the only word I can come up with, and it's so different from what we're seeing from them, which is kind of confusing, quite frankly.
A couple more for you. And Mark Heim's our guest, AL.com, WNSP Radio there in Mobile. Mark, what kind of game are you expecting to see on Saturday?
Well, I think it's got to be a high-scoring track meet, which my guess would be it would have to be advantage LSU. There's just no way to keep this LSU team under 30 or 35, right? I mean, if you keep LSU to 30 or 35, you're going to win that ball game. But I just don't see, maybe 35 or 38. Maybe they can handle that. I don't know, man. The way LSU's offense has been run up and down the field, I do think Alabama's going to have a chip on their shoulder because of the way last year played out. Then they're at home, so I give them an advantage there. I think the question is going to be, how does this Alabama team, back to your point about the offense starting, or the team starting slow and adjusting in the second half, how do they react to the adversity? Because this adversity could be a bigger hole or deficit that they potentially could have ever thought of. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it may not be 20-7. Hell, it may be 24-28-7. What are you going to do then?
It's going to be fascinating because I know LSU is going to score, Mark. I mean, LSU's they're
absolutely.
they're going to move the ball. They're going to score. The days of 9-6 are over.
Sure.
Mark, I just don't know that LSU's defense can stop Alabama or anybody from scoring either. So it kind of feels like you're looking at that total at 60, and I'm like, what? 60?
Yeah.
I mean, for one team or for both together? I mean,
Right.
You go ahead, please.
And I'm sorry. And I think that's what most people in Alabama are looking at. And so they just automatically assume if it gets into a track meet, Alabama's got a better chance of winning because Alabama's defense is better than LSU's. But, the counter to that is Alabama's defense hasn't seen an offense like this. I think people take a lot of confidence in the idea of shutting down Lane Kiffin and what was considered a pretty good offense at that time. But this is a whole nother level. So, I mean, it's really all about perspective. I'm sure LSU fans, I'm sure your callers, your listeners think that LSU is going to roll up a whole bunch of yards and a whole lot of points. And I think Alabama fans think that they're going to get just enough stops so that Jalen Milroe can put enough points on the board to make this interesting. If it comes down to a field goal, man, I love Alabama special teams. Burnup's the punter. You got the all-time SEC scorer as your place kicker. The only problem I see on Alabama's special team, Matt, is Kool-Aid McKinstry, which is just bizarre. I would have told you were higher on drugs had you said that at the beginning of this year, but he has gotten real skittish on punt returns. He doesn't know when to field it, when not to field it. When he does field it, he drops it. Saban's been asked about it. They continue to have trust in him, but man, at this point, I would go for somebody different back there.
LSU's had a similar problem. We often don't talk much about the third phase, but especially with Will Reichert, it's so funny too because I mean historically Nick's always struggled with the kickers. Man, it's been kind of like this ongoing joke, but he's got the best one he's ever had.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting if it does come down to a kick. Mark Heim, AL.com and WNSP Radio there in Mobile. Y'all follow him on Twitter at Mark_Heim. So this is like 13 years we've been doing this, man. I appreciate you for coming on.
Hey, man, and same to you. Always enjoy having you on. You guys have a great one, and it's going to be a fun one, man. It should be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, Mark. Thanks, man. We appreciate you.
Yeah, man. Take care.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.